Channel 11 presents Talk It Over. Here's your host, Ellen Adelstein.
Welcome to Talk It Over. Welcome to you. Welcome to my guest, Jim Brown. And I guess I should say welcome to Tucson to me, because I've been gone a long time, and it's sure good to be home. Jim, why are you in Tucson this weekend?
Well, I'm here to play tennis, but there's a reason for playing tennis, because the monies from this particular tournament will go to the United Black College Fund. And I happen to be a tremendous backer of Black College, because I feel that we need something that blacks can relate to from the standpoint of their culture. And I know at Tuskegee Institute, I learned more about black history than I ever would have in any other kind of university.
Did you go to Tuskegee?
No, I
were in Syracuse, weren't you?
Yes, I graduated from Syracuse, and that's why I didn't need Tuskegee, you see, because at Syracuse I learned a certain culture that really gave me no background or anything to identify with. So I used to travel, and I used to speak at most of the colleges, so I found that Tuskegee had a fantastic black history course. So I took it, and I didn't take it exactly, but I learned from it, and it gave me a tremendous feeling of pride to learn the black background of black people,
Did you enroll on campus, or did you do it by correspondence?
No, I didn't do it technically, but being a guest of the university, I was able to move around freely and to acquire this information, you see.
I see. This weekend there are events for the public. Can you tell us some of them?
Well, actually, I guess the biggest one would be tonight,
the banquet?
The banquet,
I
yes.
think that this will probably be on later.
Yes. The other activities that I know about are centered around tennis. There are going to be some really great matches between great college players, and then other celebrities, local celebrities. There will be great matches. That's about all the activities I know about.
And they're at the Tucson Racket and Swim Club?
That's exactly right.
At the end of Country Club Road?
Oh, yes.
We did that very well, right?
We
Put
did
it there.
We did it together, partner.
But everyone who's watching, do come on out and support the United Negro College Fund and see some interesting tennis.
Oh, yes. Interesting is a good word.
You're scheduled to play whom this afternoon?
We have a grudge match. I'm the defending champion. I defeated Jim Kelly last year, so Earl Monroe, the great basketball player and the captain of the Knicks, will be my opponent. We will be playing at about 5 o'clock.
Oh, I see. I presume you're going to try and keep him away from the net with his height.
Well, actually, his quickness is fantastic, so I'm going to try to use my brain power against his physical power.
Aha, that should be an interesting match. Let's switch the subject for a second and talk about your career and what you've been doing in Hollywood.
Well, actually, right now I'm first vice president of the NAACP Beverly Hills Hollywood branch, and I am chairman of this year's Image Awards. The Image Awards is a program it's an awards program, but aimed at minorities. For example, we will be giving awards to those producers who have provided certain opportunities and certain images for minorities on television. Are on the movie screen. And it's a fantastic event. We'll have Sidney Poitier, Hugh Hefner as honorary chairman, and I'm heading it up, so I'm working very hard. It will be June 9th at the Central Plaza Hotel. That's a part of it. The other area that I'm working in is we have a government grant now. We have a MESBIC, which will be a movie MESBIC. The government is giving us so much money to make movies that will employ minority companies, or at least companies which are 50% owned by minorities, so that we can fully participate in the making of films.
What does MESBIC stand for?
Well, it really means minority business. It's out of SBA, and the M is for minority. I don't know the exact technical numbers, What it really means is that the government realized that minorities are second-class citizens. We don't get a chance to fully participate. So the government subsidizes you to a certain degree. They give you $3 every one that you raise privately. And then they set up certain guidelines that you have to follow, and which allow the participation of minorities on the right level. You make quality product, you do everything as everyone else will do it, except you have a chance to participate, wherein with major studios you usually don't.
Now, the money you will raise at this dinner, will that be the $1 that will match the $3 from the government? Is that where the money is going?
Oh, no, the dinner, you mean the awards dinner? No, that's a separate thing. That's totally separate. This is really a private enterprise. The dinner is to benefit the NAACP.
I see.
And it's a big fundraiser for them, so that will go into probably their legal fund.
I see. You mentioned that this dinner is not going to be televised.
That is correct.
Unlike many other Hollywood-type dinners.
It's a good point you're making, because Miss Black America was televised last year by NBC for the first time, although it was about 12 years old. The Image Awards is about 10 years old. We did negotiate with television this year. They claimed it was a little too late to get it on, but Benjamin Hooks, who is heading up the NAACP now, have been talking to the network, so next year we anticipate putting it on television.
Do you think that will, I know why you would like to have it on television, of course, I mean, it's obvious. But on the other hand, do you think that sometimes those things become so showbiz, all these award shows is what I'm referring to, are so showbiz, and it sort of takes away from the meaning of the awards that their fellow actors, producers, and so on are giving them?
Well, that's a good point. When you talk about equality, that's a fantastic point. But when you talk about inequality, it is not. Very seldom do you ever see black faces participating on television programs in a dignified manner. A lot of people are very ignorant about the talent that we do have in television. I mean, and in the movies and in the record industry. So we would like to have 50 million people, or 100 million people, or 200 million people view it on television, so that they will be aware of the talent, things that are going on that they're not aware of at this particular time. So we must sacrifice one thing for another.
All right.
There is a bigger picture.
All right. I'd like to come back and ask you in just a moment about the opportunity for black performers in our modern-day America. We'll be right back with Jim Brown. Jim, in the 50s, and I guess the 60s and maybe the early 70s,
yes,
we all heard that it was almost impossible for a black performer to crack the movies or the Broadway stage. And of course, for the producing and directing in, it was extremely tough. And then we, in America, began to see more and more black faces in our entertainment industry. Where does this stand now, though? Has the fight been won, or do you have a long way to go?
It has regressed.
Regressed?
Yes. You see, during the 60s, you had what you call a revolution. The government came in and demanded certain things be opened up to minorities. The movie industry is a very tight industry. It's a family affair. They abided by the government. They did what the government said, and they incorporated certain blacks into the industry. Henceforth, you see commercials and certain television programs. But that has pretty much come to a standstill. That is because of black exploitation. Black exploitation was a trick played upon the public, put cheap black films out because black people are hungry to see themselves on the screen, make a lot of money, then point out that the films are cheap and they shouldn't be around, and then go back to the business of Robert Redford, Paul Newman, and $20 million budgets, and do a little tokenism, put a black on the screen once in a while. The answer to that is, once again, the government must bring pressure upon Hollywood, and blacks must develop independent monies and maybe forget about the visual part of being on the screen, but maybe make white films, but own the product, stay undercover, make enough money, and then come back and make black product. I mean, it seems ridiculous, but that's one of my solutions to it.
You mean quality black movies, not
El
Cheapos?
Yes, come back. You see, if we were not second-class citizens, what you must understand, Ellen, is that I was a first-class football player, but I will always be a second-class citizen in America because of being black. I do not complain because I live a good life, but I must recognize that particular fact. So consequently, if we did not have this double standard, then we wouldn't have to be qualifying things as black or white. They could be good or bad, quality or non-quality, you see. And our problem is that we have only a couple of shots to prove ourselves on the screen or on the television screen. So consequently, we're always being criticized for being stereotyped. Why do I play macho roles? Why is Sidney Poitier always playing sensitive roles? Why has he got such a great background? That's because if you have a choice of doing two things, then you better do the two things that's going to project a strong image rather than a weak image. But if we could participate on a full-scale level, or we can make anything from Walt Disney films to Charlie Bronson films, then we wouldn't be standouts as blacks. We would just be a part of the total picture. That's the eventual goal, just to be another American who is looked upon because of his particular talent or lack of talent.
Do you think that this problem is with the producers and the money, or is it that the writers are not writing either good movies for blacks or writing blacks into, or well, I guess the casting people putting blacks into just ordinary roles in ordinary movies?
Well, the key to it is that blacks are just ordinary people. America's a melting pot of everything. We're just ordinary people. We go to Africa, we're more white than we are black. You see, I mean...
You got problems no matter
we're
where.
We're capitalistic. I mean, we're just like everybody else. We like the same things. So really what it boils down to is not necessarily writing for blacks, because I don't have to play a black on the screen. I don't live black every day. I live black only because someone reminds me that I have to do certain things because I am black. Otherwise, I live human. So casting directors and so forth should just deal with it as a human thing. If a beautiful black lady is beautiful and talented, then she can play a role. It isn't necessary to go into an ethnic background in every film that you make. Some films are about culture, some films are comedies, some films are just adventure. You know, we don't have to get historically accurate every time it's black, you know, because Charlton Heston has played many Indians.
Do you think that this is deliberate? It sounds to me like a good portion of the problem is with the casting offices, or whatever the Hollywood term for that is.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't boil down to the casting director. He works for somebody. It's really the studio heads who deal with the exhibitors and the distributors. It's exhibitors, distributors, and the president of the production companies or the head of the studios and their boards. You have to bend a little bit to incorporate certain people into something, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're making money and you don't need to bend, why bend and take the time out to do something for someone? That might be the attitude. I don't know how deliberately they're trying to just keep you out, but there's no effort to really get you in.
All right. Let's stop for another commercial. Call a commercial what it is. And we'll be right back. And I want to ask you when we come back how you and other black stars, producers, well, not producers, I guess directors. Is there a black producer?
I'm one.
You're one. Excuse me.
But that's all right.
Okay. Okay, let's come back and talk about that in just a minute. Jim, we were talking about what the black people in the movie television community are doing to correct this, and then I was asking you about producers, and you said you are one.
Yes, I've co-produced my first film called Do They Ever Cry in America. It was a production between my company and a Filipino company. We shot it in the Philippines, and I raised all the money, casted the people, did all the things that a producer does. The film is now at the Cannes Film Festival, being handled by my representative, and I should be able to do well. It's a film that incorporates my philosophy. Sidney Poitier, on the other hand, is working within the system, but he has been making certain films that incorporate a lot of blacks in it and so forth. Fred Williamson has been making very cheap films, but at least he is making an attempt to produce and raise the funds for his films. Those of us who have any opportunity are trying to do something about it through independent money and raising our own funds and doing all the things that everyone else is doing, except it's a little more difficult. But that's the only solution that I truly see at this point.
Where did you raise your money? From which segment of our community?
You'd really be surprised.
No, I wouldn't.
I had to
go
to private investors, and I had investors from Hugh Hefner to Richard Pryor to a young friend of mine, Ron Davis in Atlanta, Don Cornelius of Soul Train, Maurice White of Earth, Wind and Fire, Leonard Smith, who is here today with me at this tournament for the United Negro College Fund, a cross-section of investors. Carol Rosenblum of the Rams invested indirectly, and that's how I did it.
I see.
They had faith in me. They probably didn't know what the picture was about, but they had faith in me, so they invested in me, and I paid most of the money back already.
Already?
Yes.
Has it been shown for profit yet?
No, it has not been shown for profit yet.
You've just paid it back out of your own funds? Or?
Yes.
Tell me about the film. What an intriguing title.
Yes, it is. You see, my theory of war is that how can you go and fight a war in a land against people that you don't know why you're fighting them and what it's all about? And if you happen to be a minority member, how do you justify this? How do you get killed or kill someone when at home you have not become a first-class citizen? So we deal with the minority situation, the black American. We deal with the good white American, the confused white American. We deal with the Japanese culture. We deal with the Filipino culture. And in the end, there's a decision that has to be made because the black American has just lost his good white friend who sacrificed his life for him. He now has a chance to blow up this whole encampment of Japanese. A great Japanese civilian who befriended this black American had committed suicide because he knew of the plot to blow it up, and instead of betraying his country or his friend, he committed harakiri. And so the black American has the plunger, and the Japanese general says to him, "Black American, why are you going to do this? They do not care for you and your country. No one wants you there. Do not blow this place up. Come with us. We're the same kind." And the question is there, and he has to think about it. And he has to reflect back on his white friends, on the way he's been treated, on everything that he has gone through. And he has this decision to make. I won't tell you what decision he made. I won't tell you if he blew it up or not, but
tell me the title again, though, so we
Do
can...
They Ever Cry in America?
Heavy, heavy title.
And we have a little scene. I do a thing with women. You know how you can be in love with a person and see someone else that's attractive? I don't know if everyone's ever dealt with that, you know? But we deal with it in the film.
You deal with it in the film?
Yes, we do, because I think it's a major question, you know. You're in love, but you see a physically attractive man.
Well, we do that all the time when we go see the movies, right? Both male and female.
That's true. But in real life,
that's putting it on a very hypothetical basis.
Do you admit it to your spouse? If you met a man that was physically attracted to you and you were physically attracted, yet you were in love, and the two of you came together, what would you do? Would you realize this attraction? Would you make an excuse? How would you approach it? And then if you told him that you couldn't deal with him physically because you were in love, as a man, how would he take it?
You mean you're bringing in the macho thing?
Yes.
About...
Do we have males who understand how to sacrifice one thing for something that is higher and greater? And so we deal with that in a very simple way in the film, you know. And so it's not a formula picture at all.
Sounds excellent. I really am going to look forward to seeing it.
Great.
Do you have stars, or did you go with the plot more than stars?
Well, we went more with the plot than stars.
Sounds...
I'm in it. I play a role in it. Richard Jekyll, who's a household face, you know, you see him all the time. He's a really great actor and a good friend. He's in it. Former football player with the Eagles, Timmy Brown, is also in it. And we have a great Japanese actor, Tad Horino, who plays a major part, and a singer by the name of Wilma Redding, who plays the girl.
Okay. All right. We'll be right back with Jim Brown. Jim, I want to change the subject for a minute here. And I had this question all in mind when I came over, and I'm very interested to hear your answer. In Howard Cosell's book, he says, and this is a quote from Howard Cosell,
yes.
that there's a social function. Correct me if I'm giving any inaccuracies on what, in quoting Howard. He says there was a social function, and he said to you, "Hi, old friend," or "Hello, old friend," or something, and you said to Howard, I'm not an old friend," and Howard said, "But we've been friends for years," or something to that effect, and you said that you could never be a true or a real friend to any white person. Now, did I quote that correctly? And if not, correct it, and then...
It's like threefold, you know. I think you did a fantastic job. I didn't actually read the quotation. I know Howard very well, and I've had many, many very deep discussions with Howard. That is not what I told Howard. What I told Howard really had nothing to do with me and individual friendships, because the greatest man I've ever known in my life happened to be a white man. His name is Ed Walsh. He just retired as superintendent of schools, not superintendent of schools, but athletic director of Manhasset High School. I just went back with about 40 of my old teammates and friends from Manhasset, and we honored him. He's a great, great man. Individual value and friendship has nothing to do with color. What I did tell Howard was that generally white people aren't your friends because, I mean, to give sympathy is not friendship in a sense. In other words, if I find that I am not able to participate with a friend on every level, how can I call that a particular friend? And I can sympathize with a white person who would love to be your true friend, but because of other white people, can't accept you on all levels. My individual friends accept me on all levels. And that's basically what I said to Howard, that because of our society, we have what we call false friendships with white people, where they play the game and we play the game. But then when it gets down to something of true value, they go that way and we go that way. You see, when Floyd Patterson criticized Muhammad Ali for being a Muslim and really got into the black Muslim thing heavily with Ali, he was up in Connecticut moving out of a neighborhood because the neighbors didn't want him there. So I thought that he was a little silly to be on the back of Muhammad Ali, who was an opponent in the ring, but as a black man to another black man, they could relate on every level. Wherein these white people that he was more or less representing in his particular fight against Ali didn't want him in a particular neighborhood. It would have been fine if he was in another neighborhood and he would have been a good black man. That I'm totally against.
Aha. We'll just hold that
Yeah,
for a
just
minute.
hold it.
Okay, all right. In America, though, do you feel that this has broken down somewhat with it, starting with the 60s, or do you still think that's as true as ever before?
Well, what you must realize is that our white youth of America has brought something different to the forefront. I've always loved the youth because they have revolted against the old style of their styles of their parents. And a lot of it had to do with rock music, being unhappy even though your father was rich. So they embrace many minorities in a manner that their elders did not embrace. So they represent a brighter future. And if they can overcome that old vanguard, then I think we have a chance for a beautiful future. So I think the future lies in the hands of the youth.
Very interesting statement. I've often agreed with you. You see it totally. I have a son who's a teenager,
Yes.
and I like teenagers.
Yes.
They're very interesting people, and in contrast to the teenagers that I grew up with, I know that my son does not see people in terms of color, which was not true in my generation.
Yes.
And I've often felt that that's the most hopeful thing for America.
Yes, you see, they are seeking, there is a universal truth, and they are seeking that truth. You see, there is a universal truth, then there is the truth that we try to live by to abide by the rules of society, which are many, many double standards. The double standards we employ to women, to overweight people, to old people, to all of these situations.
We're doing a TV show, please don't call.
You see, so these double standards are all out there. Now, as a young man, if your father's rich and your mother's rich and you're supposed to have everything, yet you're not happy because maybe they can't give you the love. So you seek out a truth. And it isn't always religion. So maybe it boils down to just treating people as you would want them to treat you. And that power is greater than any power. That's why one man can represent such a force in a society, even though the majority has all of the tanks and the guns. The guns and the tanks can never block out the power of an individual who's coming from a universal truth. You see, I feel that my power as an individual comes from the fact that I try to represent the truth, whatever it is. And even though it's very difficult at times, you get ostracized, criticized, and sometimes hurt. In the end, you win out. For example, I can read an article that I did 12 years ago, and I believe the same thing now.
Let me ask you one quick question before we finish our show. You were talking about you went to Israel and you were astonished by certain facts. Can you share them with us?
Well, I live around Beverly Hills, and it's highly populated with Jewish people, and I have a lot of people that I have great respect for. But what I thought was being Jewish in Beverly Hills was totally shattered happily when I went to Israel, because I saw some people who represented a totally different kind of life. I mean, and I don't have the time to go into the kind of life, but I had to laugh because I said a lot of Beverly Hills should get on a plane and go to Israel and get an understanding of what these Jewish people call being Jewish, you know.
We were talking before we did this about the Mercedes in Israel.
Yes, when I arrived at the airport, and you know, in Beverly Hills they say, you know, we don't want Mercedes because the Germans made them and the Germans did such bad things, which fine, I know history, okay. But then when I got to Israel, all of the cabs were Mercedes, new Mercedes, and the driver said, well, they're the best cars, you know, they last longer than the other cars, they're great for us.
Exactly.
You know, and the bygones are bygones, and what happened in the past is something, we can't live on that, these are great cars.
Yeah, I had the exact same reaction coming from the airport in Israel. Mercedes cab.
Yeah, you just couldn't believe it,
yeah.
You know.
But I think originally, when Israel was founded, some of the Mercedes were reparation payments from Germany to Israel. But they've all been replaced by now, so the best car is the best car, I guess.
Yes, it is.
In Israel.
The attitude over there is quite different. It was the second most fascinating country I ever visited.
And what was the first?
India.
Ah. Oh. I don't think we have time to go into that.
Don't.
No. Thank you so much, Jim Brown, for being my guest on Talk It Over.
You've been watching Talk It Over with your host, Ellen Adelstein. Join us every week at this same time for Talk It Over here on Channel 11. The preceding program was pre-recorded.